It's an off day, so let's see what the numbers are saying about the D-backs so far this season.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? Always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, millardthomas24downmyportfolio.com to see all of my latest work. On today's podcast, we're going to look at the D-backs by the numbers, offense, pitching, defense. We'll take a look at it all. We'll even take a look at the latest FanDuel odds. And speaking of FanDuel, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. And thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube, so please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. Our goal is to hit 2,000 subscribers by opening day. Or excuse me, not opening day, the All-Star break. So please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. But now let's get into the podcast and talk about the D-backs by the numbers. We're going to be starting with the offense because if you had to describe the D-backs offense so far, you would say explosive, strikes first. Last year, they were the answer backs. This year, they're the strike first backs. But we do need a little bit more answer backs in this D-backs offense because they're an offense that likes to start off hot and then cool off as the game goes on. And the numbers tell you the same story because there's not an offense in baseball that's better at scoring early than the D-backs. We know those first 3 innings is where the D-backs like to live right now offensively. Stat-wise, 364 average, 1009 OPS in the first 3 innings. They like to jump on these pitchers early in these games and try to, make sure that these pitchers don't pitch too long and get to that bullpen as quickly as possible. The D-backs have scored the 3rd most runs in the National League so far, which is very impressive because you got offenses like the Braves and the Dodgers and the Phillies. And for the D-backs to be number 3, that really tells you how much the off-season additions have helped out this D-backs team because they have been really important to this D-backs team so far to start the year. Eugenio Suarez, if you look at his numbers right now, they don't look that impressive. 688 OPS, but he's someone that has absolutely dominated in the clutch for the D-backs. You look at runners in scoring position, Eugenio Suarez is one of the best players on the D-backs in those kind of situations. Jock Peterson, also off to a hot start, 368 average, 941 OPS for Jock Peterson. Randall Grichuk, he's coming off the injury. He's starting off a little bit slow, but really I do like him in the lineup. I do think he swings a good bat. The numbers haven't bared it out yet, but I like what I've seen from Randall Grichuk so far on the season, and I think those additions have really helped the power department for the D-backs this year. D-backs currently 4th in home runs in the National League. Really good stuff by the D-backs from a power department in terms of over the fence power, but in terms of just hard contact, the D-backs actually need to work on in that area because the hard contact stats are not there for the D-backs. 5th worst offense in terms of exit velo and 3rd worst hard hit percentage. The D-backs just don't do enough to lift the ball at times. The Blaze Alexanders, the Kelton Martes, they get line drives. But when you look at the Jake McCarthy's of the world, the Alec Thomas of the world, even the Corbin Carrolls of the world, a lot of ground balls, not a lot of lifted balls. Like the D-backs need to get the ball in the air a little bit more. I think they need to Some of these players have more flat swings right now to start the season. I think we need to see some more hard contact as the season progresses because that has not been an area that they have excelled this year. And I think with some of the batters that they have with the Christian Walkers, the Martes, the Suarez's, the Jocks, I think the D-backs are going to be able to raise some of those hard contact stats. Maybe they're not going to be number one, but I think the D-backs could at least be middle of the pack when it comes to exit velo and hard hit percentage. The D-backs so far in the season, really good at home as well when you look at their offensive stats. 286 average, 835 OPS at home. But on the road this year, not exactly the same. They need to even out their splits a little bit more on the home and at road. 186 average, 243 average, and a 679 OPS when the D-backs are on the road. So basically, they're like half as good when they're on the road. We have seen the D-backs have some good games. We saw them against the Braves jump out to some early leads, but against the Colorado Rockies in Coors Field, the offense wasn't there as much as we might have expected, especially going against three pitchers that the D-backs dominated the first time around. But maybe that's part of the reason as to why the offense didn't explode in that series most recently against the Rockies, because we already faced those pitchers one time, so they were ready the second time around. Very interesting to see the splits between the D-backs at home and on the road. And then speaking of the D-backs being not as good late in games, the numbers bear that out. When you look at this D-backs offense, the last three innings, they are very bad. They're very bad in high leverage moments. 136 average and a 505 OPS in the last three innings. 186 average and a 602 OPS in high leverage moments. This D-backs team just hasn't been clutch enough late in games, and we saw those issues creep up against the Yankees. We saw it creep up against Atlanta. Against Colorado in the last two games, the D-backs offense was able to come through late. So some of these things that have plagued the D-backs to start the season, maybe they're starting to come around a little bit. Like some of these numbers are going to even out. Suarez was really hot to start the year. He's cooled off a little bit. Marte, he's still playing well, but he's probably cooled off a little bit when you look at his recent stats. Moreno started off the year poorly. He's starting to heat up. Carroll's starting to look like he's getting more slugging in him, a little bit more over the fence power, a little bit more gap power. So I think some of these offensive stats are starting to even out when it comes to these batters. Blaze Alexander, he's been a welcomed addition to this team so far. And as the season progresses, I think the D-backs will be better when it comes to hard contact. I think they will be better when it comes to scoring late. I think their offense, early could also lessen up a little bit. I could see a shift as the season progresses. Like maybe the D-backs score less runs early and score more runs late. The dream is for the D-backs to keep the rate that they're scoring early and add on the rate that they were scoring last year late in games. If the D-backs can do that, this offense is going to be nasty. And with Moreno and Carroll heating up, I think there's another level that the Z-backs offense can get to. Like the idea that your best player hasn't even gotten going yet, and you're third in the league in runs. Really good stuff by this D-backs offense to start the year. Yes, there's areas where it can improve, but for the first, 13 games of 2024, I'm very impressed with the D-backs offense out the gates. But we'll talk about the D-backs pitching in segment number 2 and see how it's doing to start 2024. But if you want to place a little bet down on the D-backs to win a World Series, then the best place you want to do that is going to be FanDuel, because FanDuel is the best place to place your futures bets. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL, and baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Let's talk about the D-backs pitching now by the numbers, because when we talk about the offense, I think we all already expected going into that exercise what the numbers were going to say, because I think the numbers line up with the eye test. We've seen this D-backs offense be elite early. We've seen it not be so great late, and the numbers bear that out. But when you look at the pitching, you might feel like maybe it's the starters who's better than the bullpen. Maybe just feel like overall the pitching for the D-backs just hasn't been there. Maybe feel like the bullpen has been that good this year. The numbers tell you the pitching might actually be the strength of this D-backs team right now. Yes, I told you their offense is third in runs, but the pitching is a lot better than we realize. They are fourth in ERA by their whole pitching staff at 3.88. That's pretty darn good to start the season. And I don't think when you think about this D-backs team right now, when you think of the performances that we've seen from some of their starters and the bullpen guys, you would think that the collective ERA of this team is 3.88. And if you want to just highlight the bullpen, how much have we talked so far to start the year that this bullpen has been a struggle? How many times have we already seen the bullpen blow games with the McGuffs and the Castros of the world? Well, the bullpen, third best ERA in the National League at 3.56, which feels a little bit surprising because we've seen this D-backs bullpen this season, and it doesn't feel like the third best bullpen in terms of ERA. And it feels a little bit like the numbers probably don't match up with the eye test, but maybe our eye test is just straight up wrong. The pitching staff, fifth in strikeouts and whip in the National League. Like, they're putting up good numbers. They have the second lowest walk rate in the National League as well. So it's like they're getting strikeouts. They're not giving up hits. They're not giving up a lot of walks. They don't give up a ton of home runs. Like, the pitching staff has actually been pretty good so far. Now, the staff is a lot better at home. 3.05 ERA at home, 6.01 OPS at home allowed as well. So they are a lot better at home, which is not a surprise because compared to on the road, 4.94 ERA and 800 OPS allowed on the road. But that should even out going forward because you played the Rockies twice, or excuse me, you played the Rockies once at home. He did play the Yankees at home, but to go into Atlanta, not an easy place to play. And to go into Coors Field, also not an easy place to play. So I think so far the schedule has leaned toward the D-backs at home. I think that it's been a little bit tougher on the road for them to start the year. So I'm not entirely surprised that the D-backs pitching staff is a lot better at home than on the road. I mean, overall, your team should probably be better at home on the road. The best teams in baseball, the splits are probably pretty even. So we want to see a more even split for the D-backs as well because the pitching staff, overall, the numbers tell you it's good, but there are areas it could get better because when you talk about the staff with runners in scoring position, it's been all right. 277 average and about an 800 OPS with the runners in scoring position. Like, that's fine. That's not going to kill you, but the D-backs can be better in that area. When the game is late and close, just like the offense, it struggles. 302 average allowed, 841 OPS allowed when the game is considered late and close, which once again, seventh inning or later, and it's a one-run ball game. The D-backs pitching staff struggles in that area. The bullpen struggles in that area, which makes a lot of sense. High leverage moments, 360 average allowed, 938 OPS for this D-backs bullpen. So the high leverage moments and the moments late and close in games, the D-backs pitching staff and the bullpen is very reminiscent of this D-backs lineup because the bullpen and the staff is good when I can't even say a big lead because I saw them blow a big lead to the Atlanta Braves. But when this bullpen is right, I do think they can be good when you are throwing out a sequence of Ryan Thompson, Kyle Nelson, then Kevin Ginkel. I think the bullpen can look good when you have Bryce Jarvis pitching like he did recently against the Colorado Rockies. I think this bullpen can be good because when you look at the numbers, really Castro, Frias, and McGuff are the three weaklings right now in the bullpen. I wonder if the D-backs decide to make a move anytime soon in the near future because the D-backs do have so many arms in the minor leagues. They could call up and replace some of those guys. You could send down a Luis Frias if you want. No one's afraid if we DFA Scott McGuff or Miguel Castro. But so far, if you actually look at the bullpens, look at the bullpen by the numbers, guy by guy, like Ginkel's a 2.84 ERA. Nelson and Thompson haven't allowed an earned run. Mantiply 3.38. Jarvis, he was bad to start the year. Good in his most recent outing, 4.5 ERA on the season. He can get better, but for the most part, the bullpen has actually been solid by the numbers. Like the offense, it needs to be better late, needs to be better on the road. I think the offense and the pitching staff both have the same weaknesses right now. They're good early in games, but as the game goes on, maybe a little bit tougher for both of them. We know this D-backs pitching staff is really bad. I think in the seventh inning, it's either the seventh or eighth inning. I think it's the seventh inning. No, I think it's the eighth inning, actually. Should I just look it up? Regardless, D-backs, pitching staff, bullpen needs to be better in the eighth inning. The closing role hasn't been the issue. It's been getting the ball to the closer has been the problem so far for the D-backs. And again, once this pitching staff gets healthy, once you get Monty and Erod with the numbers that the D-backs are already putting up stat-wise, when you look at the ERAs and all that, like you add Monty and Erod to this rotation, it makes it that much easier for the bullpen. And then the bullpen, once you get Paul Sewald back and everyone drops a slot in the bullpen, it'll make their jobs even easier as well. So this D-backs pitching staff right now, the numbers tell you it's actually pretty good. It's actually a top 5 staff or better in the National League. We look at ERA, look at WHIP, strikeouts, walk rate. This D-backs pitching staff has actually performed really well. Yes, they need to be better late games. Yes, they need to be better on the road, but the numbers are the numbers. And right now, it tells you that this D-backs pitching staff is pretty good. So I'm not going to complain. And we'll talk about the defense by the numbers and look at the latest FanDuel odds for the D-backs in segment number 3. But before we get into that segment, I first want to talk to you guys about this little sponsor called Ibotta, because Ibotta is great if you are trying to get some extra money in your pocket. Spring has sprung, and that means spring cleaning, whether that means stocking up on cleaning supplies or swapping out your winter clothes for new spring clothes. Make sure you're using Ibotta and get real cash back with every purchase. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies to toys. The average Ibotta user earned $256 per year. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, just add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and get real cash that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code Locked On MLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code Locked On MLB. That is IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code Locked On MLB. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. If you like the show, please follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks about Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. But now let's talk about the defense a little bit before we talk about some FanDuel odds, because when you look at the D-backs defense, this is one of the worst starts for the D-backs defense in quite some time. Usually the defense is the calling card, arguably, for this D-backs franchise the last few years, especially during the Torey Lovello era. So far, that's not the case, as this defense has struggled. Blaze Alexander has probably been the worst part of this D-backs defense, but let me check the stats again. When Blaze Alexander, as a rookie, is batting 345, 976 OPS with a couple home runs and 4 ribbies, I'll take the 3 errors he has when he's putting up stats like that as a rookie. So the defense obviously needs to be better from him, but loving what he's doing at the plate, and I think he will get better defensively as the year progresses. The D-backs right now actually 4th in errors in the entire Major League Baseball. They are 4th with the most errors, which is just not good. It is not D-backs baseball. Now, do they get double plays? Yes, they do actually turn a decent amount of double plays, second most double plays in Major League Baseball. Up the middle, they're good. Eugenio Suarez at third base has been really good. Like, the D-backs infield outside of Blaze Alexander is not a problem. Suarez has been an upgrade defensively over there at third from Evan Longoria. Maybe Suarez is not an elite athlete, so he's not super rangy, but if he gets the glove on the ball, he's got a cannon and he's throwing everybody out. So he just has to get to the ball, and then good things happen from there. When Perdomo's in at shortstop, then your defense will be good, and I'm not worried at all once he's back. Marte, solid second baseman, and then Christian Walker, once again, the best defensive first baseman in Major League baseball. When you look at some of these D-back stats, some of the more advanced defensive stats, D-backs 18th in Major League Baseball in defensive runs saved. They are 16th in outs above average. Most of the stats tell you the D backs are probably between 15th and 20th in terms of defense. The actual defense stat on Fangraphs has the D backs 20th at negative point 0.3. So this D backs defense, not that good right now. You don't have Alec Thomas. You don't have Geraldo Perdomo. Blaze Alexander has struggled to start the year. D backs have the fourth most errors to start the year. They need to clean it up. But with what I've seen from the D-backs the last few years, I'm not worried at all that this D-backs defense will come around. But now let's talk about some FanDuel odds because there are some fun ones on FanDuel. They've been updating it throughout the season, of course. If you want a really fun one, we talked about in the offseason before the Monty signing, how the D-backs were plus money to make it to the postseason. The D-backs are once again plus money. I don't know what FanDuel's obsession is with the St. Louis Cardinals, who are quite literally last in the NL Central, but they have the fifth best odds to make the playoffs in the National League ahead of the D-backs. The Cardinals are plus 100. The D-backs are plus 124 to make it to the playoffs. That's easy money. Go smash that right now. I wish this next one had a little bit more juice on it. It's only a minus 118, but the over under for D-backs wins is at 82.5 right now. If it was better than minus 118. Even if it was like minus 105, I would smash it. You can still place $100 down and win a good amount if you want to do that. If you're a D-backs fan, because 82.5 wins almost feels like disrespectful. Like, how do we have like only 82.5 with Erod coming back, Monty coming back, me just laying out how the stats tell you the D-backs are top 5 or better in terms of offense and pitching. We know the defense is bad right now, but that's like the one area that the D-backs are always really good in. They have a bunch of really good defensive players. So this D-backs team is only going to get better when they get healthier. Perdomo's out. So many guys are out right now. So I think 82.5 is kind of crazy when half this D-backs team is hurt and they still have a pretty good run differential. Actually, the best run differential in the NL West. I believe, best run differential in the NL West at the time of me recording this. So crazy to only put them at 82.5. If you look at some of the awards, it's also pretty fun. I don't really see any D-backs on the MVP unless you go to Ketel Marte at plus 8,000. Long shot, not really realistic enough for me. Ketel Marte would have to jump a lot of people. Corbin Carroll's at plus 2,300, but with his slow start, I don't know about him. The other awards are more fun for the D-backs. If you look at National League Cy Young, Zach Gallen, currently number 2 in the NL Cy Young Award. You got Zach Wheeler at plus 600, Zach Gallen at plus 700. But the guy that I really care about is Merrill Kelly, who I said this year will finally get some Cy Young votes. And I even think I said he will finish top 8 in Cy Young voting. Currently, as it stands, he's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. He's 17th in odds right now, which is pretty disrespectful. Like, he's barely ahead of Erod at plus 7,000, who hasn't even pitched yet. Merrill Kelly better move up with how good he's looked to start the year, just how good of a pitcher he is. Like, Jordan Montgomery is at plus 3,500. He hasn't even debuted yet. Merrill Kelly is still getting disrespected in the Cy Young race, despite him having like the exact same stats as Zach Gallen. No one really cares about Merrill Kelly. And I think he's the guy that's actually at plus 6,000. I wouldn't mind placing a little money down on Merrill Kelly there. I think that's actually a good value for Merrill Kelly. And then the last one I want to talk about is just the NOS odds because I just think it's kind of funny. Dodgers at minus 900, D-backs at plus 1,400, Giants at plus 1,800, Padres at plus 2,500. I don't know why it's such a chasm between the D-backs and Padres. Yes, I think the D-backs are better than the Padres, but the D-backs, Giants, and Padres are all pretty close and similar with how they're playing right now. I think the D-backs are the best team of that bunch, but should they be 1,000 more than the Padres? Maybe, but I don't think the Padres should be 700 less than the San Francisco Giants. I think the Giants and Padres at least have to be on the same tier. They at least have to be next to each other in the FanDuel odds. Like, the Giants are 5-8. I don't know why they're juiced up so much in the odds. I don't know why their run differential, or excuse me, I don't know why They're considered a team that should be considered a contender with a run differential. Yes, it's early, but minus 15 right now. They're 5-8. We know the offense entering the year was going to be a struggle, and it has been a struggle to start the year so far. So I don't know why the Giants get so much juice on FanDuel. FanDuel really loves San Francisco. They need to show a little bit more love to the reigning National League champs. Now that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back next week for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.